Yeah, so thanks everyone for coming. Thanks Codementor and Codementor team for hosting the event. Yeah, we see from the quiz that the biggest majority of people here are working with JavaScript and TypeScript, and the talk is focused mostly around the JavaScript TypeScript ecosystem. Then again, the principles that I will be discussing are relevant across the board, and I will even mention the biggest framework for using outside of the JavaScript ecosystem. So let me share back the screen and let us start. Monorepos in the JS world, I actually think that it's not describing the talk as I wanted, so I renamed it just before the lunch to Monorepos for JS developers. Yes, a bit about me. So I've been working for quite a few years, several years, on different products with different startups, and recently I've changed my focus. A few years back, I've changed my focus to be working as a consultant with many companies, helping them build and grow their teams effectively and with a reduced risk. So another couple of words about Codementor, because for me, it really, like the platform really helped save a lot of time. I am an expert in what I do, and I'm an expert in JavaScript and in the JavaScript ecosystem. Then again, in let's say AWS, I know almost nothing. There was a few times where I needed some help in AWS, and when I need help in AWS, it means that I'm about to spend a week of work, I don't know, maybe a few days of work, learning some specific feature of the platform, of networking. So yeah, I just went to Codementor, and in a few hours, everything will be resolved. So thanks for the platform, and thanks for this event and the stage. So what will we cover today? Section 1, basic concepts, then like basic concept about Monorepo and how to discuss it. What are the basic terminology that is related to managing a Monorepo? JavaScript Monorepo ecosystem, which is I assume, JavaScript Monorepo ecosystem, which will be the second section. And the third section is a deep dive into NX and how NX manages deep relationship inside our projects. So basic concepts, here it is. We have a few words that we should be familiar with in order to have this conversation about how to manage what is a monorepo, how to manage it effectively. And the terms are project or package, repository, monolith, polyrepo, and monorepo. So we discovered the project package. A repository is just a Git repository. A monolith is a server usually, or a UI, but usually a server that has a huge code base. It has a few advantages. That is, it is very easy to set up, and it is a very natural workflow to grow the project into being a monolith. So we don't need too much expertise or anything like it. It is very easy to debug since it's a single code base. We can place the debugger on the top of the first line of the entry file, and we can just step our way through the entire application. So we're actually, as a development worldwide community, we're working about how to create a similar experience for microservices. Maybe there are some services you guys know, so you can write something about it in the chat if you know a service that helps debugging microservices effectively. And another advantage of a monolith is that it is great for small applications. Then again, it is not exactly a monolith, but let's say if you have some small internal tool and you're using Next for it, Next.js, it's great, right? You don't need to run many different stuff. You don't need to configure anything. You don't need to know anything. You install it, run it. So yeah, this is it. Now the monolith disadvantages is since it's huge, we're going to be building and testing this entire code base every time every single time something tiny changes. So even if I change, I don't know, some basic UI feature, some small UI feature in the super admin screen that does not affect no one, I will still rebuild the entire code base. It will also be harder for me to test specific features. It will be possible, but harder. And I will deploy the entire code base and run the entire code base as it is. So, the disadvantages with running the entire code base is that when we're scaling, when we have many instances of a single huge code base, and for some reason it spins up many additional instances because of some additional load, it will be hard to profile and know exactly where the bottleneck is. Where if we're having microservices and we see that a single small service suddenly spins up many instances, it will be much easier to identify. So these are the disadvantages, advantages of a monolith, and basically its comparison to microservices in a very shallow way. Obviously, it's a huge topic. There's a lot of content out there about the two, but yeah, this is not the topic of the conversation.